Hey, welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's Diana.
And it's me, Jackie.
It's a new year, Diana? You want to do like a new intro where you pause before saying your name? Is that what's going on?
My co-host, so I said it's Diana.
Oh, I just forgot what I was supposed to say next. Usually I remember.
Really smooth.
And, it's not quite a new year yet. We're at the end of December. We're not at the beginning of January yet.
Wait, where are we now? We're at the end of December. Okay. I lose track of time in these timeless days and these cold New England winters. It's dark at 1 p.m. I don't know what's going on. I feel like with the new year, I'm just sad. I sit a lot. I feel like I need to do something I need to change my life around. I mean, it's one thing to sit here while we're doing our behavior analysis podcast, all about behavior analytic research, but it's another to just sit all the time and just get sad and stare out in the blackness. So we were very fortunate.
Like your soul.
Like my soul. We're very fortunate to have a revisiting guest joining us to tell us he's the man who should know how to get out of those I sit all day doldrums. Dr. Nick Green from BehaviorFit is joining us again. Nick, welcome back.
Hello. I'm glad to be here. Happy to be back. And yeah, these gloomy December sitting stories are starting to worry me. I'm glad I'm here to provide some help.
Luckily, I don't think there's any research saying that sitting all day is bad for you in any way whatsoever. So we should be fine, right?
Yeah. All right. Show over. Goodbye, everybody.
Wait,
thanks for stopping by.
That's not ethical, Nick. Yeah. If you see someone's got a terrible problem,
2 minutes CE. There you go. You got it.
Oh boy, we were just talking before we started recording, but it has been a little while since you've been on the show. I think the last time we talked, you were just Nick Green, behavior analyst, as opposed to Dr. Nicholas Green right now, right?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it was quite the journey. It's amazing how the time kind of flew by. And yep, I made it through the grind of doing that whole dissertation defense thing and graduating, and a lot of hard work. Very proud of my efforts, and some of what I studied we'll talk about today. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, great.
Way to go. It's a major accomplishment.
It is not one I'm not going to do anytime soon because I'm sitting too much. I don't have time. Much too busy sitting and staring. So today, in line with that theme and in line with kind of getting ready for a new year, we're going to be talking with Nick about fitness, physical activities, and fake resolutions. And I wish I could take credit for that title. But again, Dr. Nick, that was your original contribution to our discussion today.
Maybe also the articles.
I guess. The articles too. We haven't gotten to them yet.
Okay,
we'll get to them soon. So we'll be talking about sort of how to, think about fitness, setting fitness goals, but then also Nick will be talking about your line of research, which is in how to improve sedentary behavior, specifically among office workers, though really anyone who's sitting too long.
We've lived through this pandemic thing for a while, and if you didn't work in an office before, you're working at home, and that's your office now. So same topography, same function, bad for your health, so we need to do something about it.
I feel like I actually sit more at home because I don't have to walk anywhere from my car to anywhere. I see no one, so I don't even have to go. I can't even walking to the bathroom is even less steps.
The environment is working against us in many, many ways when it comes to maintaining healthy, fitness behaviors, maintaining these fitness repertoires, right? So you're exactly right.
You can imagine at work, Jackie is the social butterfly of our department, so she's always out and about. She also knows where all the candy dishes are, so that may be potentially working to her detriment.
Right, it's funny you mention that. It's the social butterfly, the social contingencies. Those of us that find interacting with people more valuable when that gets taken away from you in the workplace, and now you have no people around you, that being in person could have reinforced more physical activity, and here we are, less people, less likely to walk to, your friends or colleagues, cubicle, office, down the hallway.
And Nick, way, way, way less candy.
Way less candy? Yeah, oh yeah.
So way less candy.
I guess a side benefit there. If there's fewer opportunities to nibble on the old candy dish, fewer opportunities for bagels at 9:00, it's going to have other benefits, but, we gotta weigh, the cost benefit of everything, considered.
So Nick, before we get into, your updated research, it's been a little while since you've been on the show. And for some folks, it might be the first time they're hearing you. So would you mind telling everyone a little about yourself and how you got into the fitness realm of practice and research?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Most researchers nowadays are in kind of the autism developmental disability space, and that's where I came from. I came into the field in 2010, so a good solid 10 years. I got the double-digit experience under my belt now. So for 5 years, I worked as a therapist before the RBT credential was a thing. Then I heard about the job on a whim. That's how I kind of got into the field. And a couple years into the program, or actually my day job, I learned about the science, and I just happened to be in a really good teaching environment where my colleagues there at the clinic that I worked at went to Florida Tech. I signed up for the BCABA core sequence back on the 3rd edition task list that Dr. Jose Martinez Diaz, who passed away recently. So we send all the love and support to Jose. So I went to Florida Tech online, did that for, a year, passed that exam, the BCABA, and then I was like, well, in my late 20s, I really like the science thing. That seems to be the best thing happening right now. So I took a leap, and at the time, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, we said, let's move to Florida. So then speed up the clock a little bit. We went to Florida Tech on campus, where, Jose set up that school there, behavior analysis. I got my degree in OBM. And when I was in this whole research side of things, again, coming up from a practitioner, I didn't really know too much about research. You got to put together some type of study. And at that time in my life, I was starting to, probably be not as fit as I should be, and start learning about, movement and activity just on a personal note. And I turned that idea into a research project about reducing sitting in the workplace. So for anybody listening out there in general, if you find a problem and you like to study it and it means something to you, that's probably the easiest way to find a research topic. So I looked at the literature. Nobody's studied this target behavior before. So I said, let me try. And then that led me down, publishing my master's thesis, led to an opportunity to study further at the University of Florida in the PhD program, then completed a couple studies there, and then graduated with a PhD in May 2019. And here we are. So that's a little bit about me.
So, Nick, the last time you were on, we talked a lot about sort of your history with researching fitness and learning about fitness. Has the science of fitness changed significantly since that last time? Or do you feel it's a field that you keep learning new things about? Or has it been an extension of taking what you had learned, back when you first started getting interesting and sort of adding in what you've been learning as a newer researcher?
Yeah, I think really to answer the first part of that, like the science of fitness has been pretty well established, through all the exercise physiology research, heart attack research, right? People that are obese have higher BMIs, are more likely to die from cardiovascular disease, right? People with diabetes have X, Y, and Z problems. So that's been pretty much, we all kind of know, right? We know the food pyramid exists. We know the general recommendations, how much we need to exercise, but really it's been a challenge to us to figure out how do we go ahead and monitor these important socially significant health and fitness behaviors on a day-to-day basis. How do we actually look at changing the environment at the individual single case design level to look at how, behavioral science can help with these, important behaviors. That's been the science of the health and fitness has been the same, right? Slapping on the behavioral technology to make behavior move in the correct direction. That's been the real challenging part.
So why don't we start talking about sedentary behavior? Because if we're going to talk about goals, I do love your lines of research, Nick, and I have enjoyed kind of the last times we talked. Since then, personally for me, I found a standing desk that was just in the corner of my office that nobody was using, and I said, I'm going to use this standing desk. Now I get to be the standing desk guy.
There you
office.
Go. Look at that. We call you like the behavioral rascal in the organization who's, sharing some new ideas that people might like. So that's music to my ears. It warms my heart.
It's great for Zoom calls too, because everyone else is sort of sitting and they're just like in the same pose. And I'm just like dynamically moving my hands and I can move back and forth. Yeah. So I definitely feel more alive.
You're so dynamic. You're all over the place. I'm on my feet, thinking on my feet.
I'm a vivacious young go-getter. What can I say? But when we talk about sort of goals, I think if we were to talk about, all right, here's how everyone is going to get, really just like super jacked and like have, Marvel hero body physiques, everyone's going to turn off the podcast and say, I can't do that. That's way too hard. But when we talk about your specialty of research, sedentary behavior, I feel like everybody says, you know what? I bet I could stand up and walk around for 2 minutes. I bet I could do that. It feels like the most achievable goal ever set in front of anyone regarding fitness.
Yeah, just in general, to then just kind of talk of like what's the science of sedentary behavior. So sedentary behavior is, right, too much is basically think of sedentary as sitting or lying down. You're not moving your body, above your resting heart rate, basically. So you're sitting still, not using your body. So you look at, that's a socially significant target, right? So what happens is over time, when you accumulate large volumes or large durations of this sitting time throughout the day, then that is going to actually be, this is the piece that kind of changed my perspective on everything. It's like, okay, exercising is good, but what we found out with sedentary behavior, not we, but, all the fantastic public health researchers out there, they run the meta-analyses and find that sedentary behavior is an independent risk factor of preventable disease, even if you exercise. So that just means that too much sitting basically causes other health problems down the road, even if you exercise. So it's all about that regular movement throughout the day.
That's like really depressing, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to work out. So you do your 30 minutes of workout and then you sit at your job all day and you've not done really anything beneficial really to help you according to that, right? You got to keep going.
Yeah, it can be depressing to think of it that way. Obviously, exercising, meeting the recommendations is better than not.
Right.
But it's kind of twofold. You need to move a little bit throughout the day and get that specific exercise. And so you see that volume piece, and also you need to break up the long bouts of sitting behavior. So if you have, say on average, you sit for an hour before you stand up, say that's your average for the day. But we know, just through the research, that if you have a shorter duration average, so let's say you get up every 10 to 20 minutes on average, then you're going to have better health outcomes there. And it's really, I say outcomes, it's, everything's about risk management. So it's just the way that the researchers put these numbers together. It's okay, we put these people in a group. We found out that when we objectively measure their health and fitness and physical activity, that people that were more active and sat less throughout a 5-10 year period, they were less likely to die from preventable disease, heart disease, things like that. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach to, just doing the basics for general health and wellness outcomes.
So we're going to talk all about your research on improving the sedentary behavior. So getting a little bit more walking around. I should probably make sure everyone out there knows what articles we'll be discussing. So the main one we'll be talking about and sort of, trampolining off to discuss the idea of, fitness is a bigger goal and setting.
I didn't know you were
criteria.
trampolining today.
Well, I hear that's a good exercise too, right?
Yes.
If you have the insurance, if your insurance is covering your giant trampoline in the yard.
That's funny.
So we'll be talking about our special guest, Dr. Nick Green, and Dallery's Evaluating the Effectiveness of Education, Feedback, and Task Clarification to Increase Workplace Physical Activity from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management, 2019. And then we'll also be referring to, and these are articles we actually have discussed on the show, but always good to have them sort of ready to go. And we'll be reviewing some of them as well in terms of just lines of research. Decreasing Bouts of Prolonged Sitting Among Office Workers by Green, Sigurdson, and Wilder from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2016, which we talked about we talked about it with Nick on a bonus episode, but it originally was in one of our grab bags. I think it was our second grab bag ever. So very long time ago now.
So episode 24?
Yep, episode
Wow.
24.
And look at us now, 125 episodes later.
Right?
And then also we discussed in a previous episode on sort of healthy behavior, internet-based contingency management increases walking in sedentary adults by Curdy and Dallery from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2013. So we'll be sort of referring to those, but our main article will be the most recent one that you did, Nick, on improving sedentary behavior. So I guess just because, again, it has been a while, would you mind sort of talking about where your ideas for, well, what are we going to do to increase sedentary behavior? Because you sort of want to say, like everything, well, what if we show everyone, hey, you're sitting, you're going to die no matter how much exercise you do much sooner. You think everyone's going to jump out of their seat in surprise at the very least, and then, promise to never sit again. But as your research keeps showing, and as most research on fitness is showing, just saying, I want to be healthier doesn't seem to work any magic whatsoever.
When you position it like that, the whole antecedent education argument kind of doesn't work for everybody all the time, because if words worked, then If words only in education work, then none of us would smoke, drink alcohol, or, engage in other dangerous behaviors. Interestingly enough, with the whole sedentary behavior thing, I find this more and more as I, share this public health information on these types of podcasts, or if I write about it on the blog. It's really just it's always going to be kind of like a new topic. So the education piece is still very important. You could, if you see a flyer from my research study, and like, oh, sitting, what's so bad about that, right? Like, how it is when you subject matter expert in your field, like you know about this stuff all the time, but it's always good to remember that, like, oh, this is going to be new to somebody. So educating people on, health risks of sedentary behavior in this case is an important part of it. So we look at, okay, let's educate folks first, and then consider, okay, these are the general recommendations related to these health risks, and this will be our approach, specifically with reducing that average sitting bout duration. We look at that and figuring out how to best, what is the feasible frequency that you can get up and move, in your workplace. So that was the general kind of strategy going in, as far as education is concerned.
And so in, the original study, you had some office workers. I think you said they were from Florida Tech, or
they were local Southeast University campus.
Okay.
You can fill in the
where.
We don't. I'm sorry. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know where.
We don't know where technically, but can make a good guess.
And so, you started with, individuals who were interested in improving their health. None of them had met that, the 150 minutes of, moderate exercise per week that the Department of Health, Human Services, has put out in the past. That's older research. And would you mind just doing a quick summary of sort of what the overall research methodology, the procedure was for the listeners?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the first one, so many people nowadays, right? We all have Fitbits, Apple Watches, Garmin's, things like that. And they do a great job of tracking sedentary behavior indirectly and step counts, things like that. But the device that I used was called an Acacdemy. And so participants wore it's a hip worn accelerometer. It's like red clear plastic. And so office workers would wear this under their shirts or on their waistbands. And so it's like a research grade accelerometer then that tracks the specific duration of, the volume of total sedentary time throughout the day, and then what the average bout time was throughout the day. And it would track, okay, I was sitting at my desk for 35 minutes to the end of the bout, and then you walked around for a couple minutes, and then it controlled for like the onset and offset of the duration of sedentary behavior. So they wore that device. The recommendation then was we'll need to get up and move every 30 minutes. That's what experts recommend. And then we look at how those prolonged bouts, if they decreased over time or not. After I was given, we programmed for, feedback and goal setting. So, okay, we measured, took baseline, gave them information. That didn't change behavior. We gave feedback, say, okay, this is what we need. And we started setting some goals, and then went from there.
In terms of setting the goals, it was, based on sort of what their baseline was, right? Or what their previous, I think it was like 5 days, I think, that you looked at. So they had that data. Can you remind me, they had an email? Was it with the data, or was just like quantitative, like here's your percent averages? I know it's been a while since that one.
Right. So the first one, that was the email. We looked at actually, how many bouts of prolonged sitting that you had each day. And and so it's participative, goal setting, like, okay, you had this many bouts, let's say it was 8, the goal is to decrease it. What would you like to set it to? And so let's say it was 6. And then the email would say something like, okay, your goal was 6 bouts and you took 6. So nice job meeting your bouts. Please continue to meet this goal the next day. Very simple. That type of just language like that.
So I have a quick question. If someone was standing at their desk, would it register as a bout of sedentary activity?
Right. So good question. So because these are worn on the hip and the way that the accelerometer measures sit to stand transitions, you wouldn't get standing time with this, but you would get like the number of transitions up and down. And that's kind of a unique feature of that. But specifically with the 3 participants that I had in this original study, they all had normal sitting desks. I was hesitant to answer right away because there is one very, I would call it invasive research device. It's called an active PAL. And that is actually like a sticker that you wear on the outside of your thigh. And you have to put like a waterproof sticker on top of it. Did I say sticker twice? So it's a accelerometer. So I think you put it on, it's like a small pad, probably like the size of maybe like a Tic Tac box, maybe not as thick, but then a waterproof adhesive sticker goes over the top of it. So then in those studies, again, it doesn't lend itself to single case design. And that's kind of that's a unique part of all this, right? So I was motivated to look at how can we use single case design to study sedentary behavior, because in, ergonomic studies, public health studies, they're doing this, but they're doing it in a group design. And so you can never see what individual variability is. So
you're talking about the sticker, the standing up, and
so they're measuring sedentary behavior and activity, but in a group design. So when individuals would wear the active graph or this active pal, like I'm talking about, again, the invasive device where participants would wear it for like 7 days straight in showers, in pools, everything. But then it would be, a group of 1,000 people, and they would they'd wear it for like a week, send it in, and it's classic group design. One group got, health coaching, feedback, goal setting, everything in the kitchen sink, and then the control group got nothing. And she's like, okay, well, what was the individual response? That's just a nature of group design versus single case design. But anyway, so the active POW would record that sit to stand transition and standing time, but you can't really get that with the active graph. That goes down a whole technical nuance. But if you think about, what do we have in today's, applied setting outside of a research study, if you have like a Fitbit on your wrist and you're standing, that's technically better because you'll be burning a few more calories, but you still need to move around. That's a general recommendation. So I actually had a friend the other day say, I was working at my desk for 3 hours straight standing, and then my Apple Watch told me I was not moving and not active. I was like, well, it's because you need to walk around. And so that's the whole point of like that. The Apple Watch ring is to walk around and not just be standing. So a couple different, tangents there, but there's all kinds of issues of measurement and actually, seeing what, how to go about affecting this, this topography.
My Fitbit doesn't clock it if I'm standing. I actually have to take steps. I have to move my arms. Like, it'll only half track if I'm like holding onto a stroller, right? So you do need to be like moving.
You kind of have like the consumer grade devices, which is if you were just swinging your arm at your desk, you would get activity, but that kind of defeats the purpose of doing that.
Strengthen my arm, Nick. Strengthen my arm.
You just got to switch arms every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Nick, if I marched vigorously at my standing desk, I would meet the criteria for physical activity, right? Like, so that would be fine. I'd be doing that all day, just marching away and swinging around. Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's how I'm going to stand tomorrow.
Luckily, Rob works alone.
I will be marching all day. Yeah, I think I addressed the question there. So the research grade devices, this active POW, which I didn't use, but the active graph, which I did, it does have the fancy algorithms and measurement devices because it's on the hip. Measuring on the hip is more accurate than the wrist, but I didn't look at that specifically as far as like the sit to stand. It's always that if I knew now or if I knew then what I knew now, it's like, oh, I would have measured sit to stand transitions and all these other things, but
Well, that's all right. That's the point of research.
Exactly.
So we learn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's very helpful.
I remember in that article, I was so surprised that just the tactile prompt itself didn't seem to be effective at anyone reaching the goal.
That was a big part that I left off. Right. Each person had a vibrating watch. This is right before Fitbit and Apple Watch figured out how to make vibrating timers on your watch. So I had an old school vibrating watch that I had to swap in and swap out, which if anybody continues this research today, you got it made.
Right.
So true.
But yeah, to your point, Rob, the vibrating watch did not change behavior as an antecedent as much as we wanted it to.
Right, because you're like, it's annoying.
The only person I know who I have seen it affect their behavior is my mother, who, when we last saw her, we were driving, we were going to visit my brother, and she was there. And we saw her running around the neighborhood, and we thought, what has happened? Has her dog run away? Is something going on? And we realized, after we stopped, we said, what's going on? She said, oh, my watch just told me I have to run or it will beep at me. And she's like very scared of the watch beeping at her. Like, it's very aversive when it tells her she hasn't like reached her goals or hasn't moved.
Right. Well, I was going to bring up this point later on is I wanted to examine the impact of how rule governed someone is with regard to the use of these and or their perception of the rules in their office place.
I would assume younger people are less inclined to care because we have a million things that are buzzing and beeping at us all the time, and that's how we've grown up. Whereas people who are not used to it, like, it's scary. Like, I don't want to be yelled at by my technology.
Yeah, I think that would be if somebody were to like map out. I mean, we could all do it. We could think about like what are all the possible antecedent buzzes, reminders, notifications that we get on a day-to-day basis. And as far as like stimulus saliency goes, like it's just another ding that's going to get lost in the mix.
Yeah, especially if you use your Fitbit for other things such as your text messages or email.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Right. So then, or like if mine, I have it set to like, if I've walked the 250 steps that it wants me to per hour, it'll like give me a little like, you did it. But I don't even care about the you did it anymore. I'm like, oh, it's buzzing. Something's happening. I'm not sure what. I'm not going to look.
Right. But also, interesting point on the rule governance too. It's like, unless there has been a previous contingency consequence that may have come before the prompt. So I'm thinking, let's say you go to your doctor. Your doctor says, wow, you have really bad low back pain. Now, that is probably going to function as some type of establishing operation to increase the value of said prompts for reducing back pain, for increasing activity, for improving your blood flow, whatever, likely is the case. If there is a recent significant, medical situation, that would probably increase, those prompts, regardless if they're in the sea of emails and calendar alerts.
So I think let's take a very short break. We want to stand up, walk around, and then when we come back, we will talk about your most recent article, Nick, and all the technological and knowledge-based decisions you got to bring into designing that article. So everyone stand up, walk around, unless you're in a car, in which case pull over to the side of the road before you jump around, and we'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD-level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
Hey everyone, before we get back to the main episode, I want to remind you that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. By listening to the show, you are able to earn 1 Type 2 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening to the show, then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com/getCEUs. That's get-CEUS, and enter in 2 secret code words that we've hidden in the episode. I'm going to give you the first one now, courtesy of special guest Dr. Nick Green. It is guitar. Guitar, or as you might say it if you're a rocker, guitar, because you would play the guitar in a rock song. Anyway, guitar. And let's get right back to the show. And we're back talking with Dr. Nick Green about setting fitness goals and improving physical activity. So Nick, you did your initial research and it was time to come back and to do a little bit more, because certainly is one of the few studies to look at improving sedentary behavior or improving physical activity versus sedentary behavior. You didn't answer every single question with the one study. When you were designing...
Disappointing.
I know, sorry. Unlike some people, you didn't answer all the questions. When you were designing the new study, I know you mentioned so much the use of the Fitbit in the 2019 study. Was it a matter of, it was like a plethora of riches of like, we've got so many just cheap devices that we could be choosing from? Or was it the same problem of there are a million devices we could use, but none of them are going to do what we need them to do, or the sensitivity is not there?
For me, so then I completed the study at UF, and our lab had a bank of Fitbits to use. And I just kind of looked at, okay, how can we use these devices? And also a limitation of the actigraph. So being on a previous campus with only 3 devices, it was much easier to download and retrieve the data as opposed to when you have to put a fleet of, 10 to 15 Fitbits out in the field, you can't get to all of them. And then when you're on campus, let's say you're at a big university, there's more security. So I'm just like, okay, really half the battle, again, with all this figuring out how to measure this behavior is like, how can I do this at scale within the confines of, IRB, having good security, getting good access to the data. So, and we switched from the actigraph to the Fitbit because I wanted to look at just the general activity, again, every half an hour, right? Those step counts. So we want to look at how much activity people were getting throughout the day.
It wasn't something you were like researching what was on the market or anything. It was like, these are available. These are going to cover, what we need for, IRB approval in terms of confidentiality, the logistics of getting all that data. Because it seemed like you had a fancy setup in terms of the upload of the data. The participants had access to some of their data, but you had access to all of the data related to their activity levels.
Right. Yeah. So we used, research profiles. And so we'd have them, half the time people had their own personal Fitbits, but what we would have to do is have them log out of their own personal account, log into the research Fitbit account. So then we could monitor and then give them feedback over email the next morning because the feedback was delivered each day when we were in that phase. So there's a bit of, a technical challenge too, because if you have 10 to 15 participants that are all in different locations, you can't give in-person feedback in 10 different places unless you have 10 research assistants, which again, once you start saying this out loud, you're just like, well, this isn't possible. We got to come up with a better way. So that was just kind of my, again, without seeing anything else out there, as far as like a methodology, I was like, well, this seems simple and practical for me. So let's go ahead and try this.
So did you have to stay up till midnight every night to see what their scores were?
I had a research assistant and they would download and crunch.
They stayed up till midnight.
So you just need to make sure it's done by 7. So then I would wake up in the morning and send the emails.
Okay.
I'm a little bit
It's a
jealous.
tag team effort.
Yeah.
Researchers, they might want to stay up a little later, after their party was done.
It was a great opportunity for an undergraduate to obtain some research experience.
And stay up late.
And stay up late. They're going to be up late anyway. I was an old man. I need to go to bed.
Late night research is for the young, I think.
If I had to pick stay up till midnight to get the scores or email people at 7 a.m., I would definitely pick the midnight.
Mm.
It takes all kinds.
Because you're always partying, Diana. Because you're so young.
You know me.
And hip.
That's me.
Yeah, so we just, we just kind of switched so from the first study we talked about on this podcast to this one, we switched a couple of things. We changed the target behavior to steps, and then we used a different device and went from there.
In terms of the overall purpose, it was, looking more specifically at the physical activity rather than just, the standing. You had your commercially available tracker. So again, it was kind of bringing it up to, the speed with what technology would be, widely available for everybody. What were the other kind of big questions? You had a bigger pool in this study than their first study. Were there other big questions you were like, I really hope I can get a better answer to, this question?
Not really. It was more of just trying to troubleshoot just a methodology to, for a single case design on this target behavior. And that was a lot of the feedback I got from other faculty members that share the feedback that I got. It was like, oh, it's like, maybe you didn't get the results that you wanted, or there's other variables that you couldn't measure. That was a result of that produced the variability. But, I was, praised for, it was like, well, you're developing a method that really hasn't been done before. I was like, oh, okay. That makes me feel good because, when you have 15 Fitbits out there and you're getting some success and some not, you're just like, is it the device? Is it the intervention? And it's trying to answer a research question while developing the methodology. Was both things were happening at the same time. So no large looming question.
This study certainly was, a bit more complicated than the first one in terms of you were looking at the steps, which it was harder. You had the online portal rather than actually being able to, look at the actigraph. You sort of did all the bouts into the 30-minute bouts of the work days for everyone. And then you had your activity level groups. Could you kind of describe that section of the study?
Sure. So we looked at some low, medium, and high activity. That was really just looking at relative to each other, who had the lowest baseline average step counts per day during the baseline. Then you had the medium and high, and then I just separated them just for ease of visual, analysis on the multiple baselines. So it was arbitrary, but I just decided to separate the groups that way. And then, as I delivered the intervention, just made it contingent on, stability and performance after that.
And I cannot remember if the first study had this, but it did seem like there was an end. There was a termination criteria for all of the participants in that, hey, you walk enough.
Nick had to graduate.
Yeah.
That's what that was. That's the real story behind research and articles.
It was good though, because when you think about it, if you could get everyone to the point where they're getting up and moving, and at some point, I know you wanted to look at the stability over time that didn't come out necessarily in this study, but that's it. You solved it. You solved the problem of too much sitting. Quote unquote solved it. So it was good to have that in there. That was a possibility that someone could say, "Hey, look at me. I walk enough now." Right.
Yeah. I think that the interesting piece is that so I'm thinking of the dates of like when I collected the data and when the research was coming out and when the consumer products were being updated, that it was like an interesting, I was in the, just kind of the timing of everything where I was learning the research that was coming out like from 2009 to 2010 to 2015-ish. So I was learning that. And so as I was learning that research to then influence my research design, at the same time, I was watching the consumer market, and the consumer markets, Apple, Fitbit, they're drawing from the same research that I was pulling from, but they were making products. So it was interesting to see like how we were. So like the whole, like my definition of activity then was 100 steps every hour. And then Fitbit's update was like, it was like in the middle of my study, Fitbit made an update that said, you need to take 200 steps every hour. And so they were just, going, a little more liberal, conservative. They were just, made the goal a little higher just to get people moving that much more. Yeah, a little more robust. Yeah. So it was just interesting to see like those are the real world kind of contextual variables that are like a part of, okay, I'm trying to do a study based on the researcher recommendations that I'm pulling from, say 100 to 150 steps, but then the consumer product says 200. So it's all fitting that balance as I'm making decisions. Of course, I'm making decisions based on research criteria, but you're working with real world people. So all that was happening right around all the technology was improving. So it was very interesting to navigate from the research side.
They really want people to be walking more, or if they walk more, they'll break their Fitbits and buy a new Fitbit. You sort of have that cynical thought at the back.
Well, I mean, it's just another feature that they're giving to the device. They've always, Fitbits have always had steps. Apple Watch is new, so right, each have their own health researchers, and they're pulling from the same pool of research articles. So it's a thing, I guess. So it's just interesting to kind of watch how research evolves, and then how industry then pulls what they want from the research.
So for your study, you have everyone. They have their Fitbit Zip, right? Was the
right,
brand,
which they don't make anymore, which is a little clip that you can put in your pocket or put on your belt, right? Very simple device. Yeah.
I remember
Yeah,
those.
I used to have one of those.
Okay.
I had one of those too.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Jackie, I think I had yours that you then gave to me.
I upgraded and gave you mine, Diana.
Yeah.
Would you get like the Fitbit Blip or the Fitbit Ace? There's a whole lot of random ones out there now.
I still have one, although I'm less happy about it. But
don't say the name. They're not paying us any money, so let's not advertise for them too much. So, Nick, you had your education and monitoring to start. So everyone got their Fitbit. You told them the benefits of increasing activity levels. Much like in the last study, it didn't seem to be the slam dunk that we always, we wish it would be. So then you had your feedback, and then your feedback and task clarification. So what was the big difference between the two, either from the last study or from the two conditions from each other?
Right. So what I found was, this is kind of an audible in the middle of the study, was that people were moving, but they weren't meeting the threshold. So they would move every hour, and you could see that visually. Log into the Fitbit dashboard, you just histogram data, basically bar graphs. You could see like, oh, they were moving every hour like they're supposed to, but only for 20 steps, 50 steps. Mm-hmm. So went in with task clarification for a couple folks to say like, okay, you were moving, but we need to make that 100 steps.
And the clarification was just in the email you need to do 100 steps in 30 minutes, like it was the same clarification each time, or was it specific to the participant?
Right. Yeah, that was specific to the participant because not everybody received that feedback.
Some people just got feedback, great job, keep it up, you mean? Or
the language on the feedback was, right, this was your goal, you met the goal, and remember, it's always good to move every hour by taking 100 steps, or every 30 minutes by 100 steps. Pretty straightforward. So,
and it seemed like it was, the overall procedure was sort of effective for some of the participants, less effective for others. I mean, was that an outcome that you were expecting? We're talking about fitness. It's a little, and you had 8 subjects this time. There is that sense of, well, not everyone's going to be able to change their behavior just because of the one intervention. Or were you surprised that more people got closer to their goals? I think only one person met the goals, but half of them did better at least.
Yeah. So, when you look at the graphs, in the article, you do see, some differences. You did have that one participant who was kind of the star performer, participant 2, that really, as soon as we set the goal in there or the feedback, they were good to go. But really, I think the theme is that you have so much variability because if these folks are in the middle of their workday, there's so many different contingencies in the workplace that it didn't matter if I sent them an email in the morning or they had a reminder, that those larger environmental events would prevent them from engaging in the desired research, target behavior, which was, moving on a regular basis. So, and anecdotally, I recall from just speaking with other people that kind of the couple variables that played bigger factors that I think were that some people just didn't have the work autonomy, that they could control their schedule and leave freely from their desk, which is something, you learn about in the process. So, in the future study would look at, okay, can you freely, run your schedule? Can you leave your desk? Are there any other workplace barriers that could prevent you from, leaving the desk? And then there'd be other times where if this is a university, there would be larger work demands around, enrollment, end of semester, beginning of semester, that it doesn't matter how much feedback I gave them, their work still needs to be done. They can't leave their computer, which, reflects a lot of, pandemic life that, we're all Zooming in to school. We're all Zooming in for conferences. You're paying an employee to complete work and they can't leave. So you have all those larger variables that tell us that there's more opportunities for research on this target behavior.
But at least when you're on Zoom, you can stand up and often walk around. I bring my computer with me, lots of different places in my house.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point there. It's like, I really think it really just opens up the possibility of what to measure, right? If it's, the general public health messaging that we draw from is, oh, we just need to get up and be active and, get our 10,000 steps. And like, well, that might not be feasible in the workplace. And some people could be coming from different baselines. And you had people in the high activity group that they were just, naturally, so to speak, loosely speaking, that they were already active. So they would actually reach a ceiling. So that whole 10,000 step being active in the workplace, that doesn't really apply to them. So then we start looking at, okay, how do we better assess our employees? How do we best assess research participants to come into a study that is most meaningful for them?
I know in terms of social validity, everyone seemed, relatively happy. But like you were saying, Nick, there was a really high percentage given the last study. I think 63% stated that the increases in activity that they were reaching for didn't impede their work productivity, which means that a large percentage of individuals just having to move the recommended amount to maintain good health practices throughout their life were being, told or were deciding for themselves, if I move this much, I'm going to get fired, or I'm not going to be able to do my job properly, and I know they mentioned like work, certainly, like you were mentioning, even meetings. I know, Dana, you talk about, a Zoom meeting, but I was sort of, when I was reading the article, was imagining someone in like the big board meeting or the big staff meeting where they're talking about layoffs and like, hold on, I got to jump around and start walking around the desk, everybody. Like, probably not going to be. That might
not be the time.
Not the time, no matter how much you're.
People always want a reason to leave a meeting, right?
True. I don't want to die. Got to get up.
Right?
Yeah.
And on that side too, like I tell my students, because we have 4-hour classes. So I tell my students, like, it's fine if you want to get up, walk around, you can go stand in the back of the room. Like any of those things is fine, because sitting for 4 hours is not
You're
great.
the best. Is he a professor looking out for the health of the students?
I've only had 2 people do it so far.
I think it's a trap. You're like,
they are
you
welcome
failed.
to. I don't care. I don't mind it.
I don't mind either. I do it. I'm like, I can't sit here. I'm walking around.
Yeah, it brings up, just the social contingencies, the social culture that's, baked on top of, right, this, we're active or we're not, right? We're sitting down at the desk, we're in a boardroom, and, you can kind of channel any type of Aubrey Daniels OBM type talk, and it's like, okay, well, what's workplace culture? It's the way we do things around here. Okay, what's the way we do things? We sit around a table all day. Why is it like that way? Well, that's what we've always done.
Yep,
Whoever
that's
said that
it.
we have to
Yep.
go sit in a conference room all day? That's just, just the way furniture has been built and all these other things, and people like to sit down and, again, sitting's okay. You can, if you stand for half an hour, you can sit down for half an hour. There's no specific prescription when it comes to that, but just maintain a good ratio, right? It's not sitting's the devil and it's going to get you. It's too much sitting and, staying inactive for too long, whether it's at work or at home, over the long term. Again, you just want to have a good trend over time. Like one bad day, so to speak, isn't gonna kill you. I always get that whenever I present at a conference. People just start standing up right away. Oh, don't want to die.
Right.
This is bad. Like, it's not about the day. It's about the trend over the long term. But I appreciate your participation right away.
Yeah, and I think if there's an awareness of this, that people may be able to find times that work, hopefully within the type of work that they do, in order to meet at least one of these criteria. Because there could be the criteria of let's try to get 10,000 plus steps a day, or let's try to make sure you're moving at regular intervals. And, when I did go to campus, I would often see like the secretaries or administrators get their running shoes on their lunch break, and you could see them like booking it around the campus. And we have a really hilly campus, and it's great. Like, go around that campus a few times, like you have gotten a lot of steps in and gotten your heart rate way up. So maybe that, I don't want to guess if that's going to offset having to sit for periods of time just based on the constraints of your job. But I think if you can find a way to fit in something, that's better than nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, if we have people in the audience that are students and need a research topic, or if there's a faculty member that is looking to mentor students on a research topic, I mean, there's so many opportunities, because as I focused on workplace wellness, it's like, okay, everybody, it's a very prescriptive, hey, let's do these walking challenges. Let's do this. Let's do that. Well, maybe not everybody has access to a pair of running shoes. Maybe not everybody has access to the technology. Maybe not everybody has access to that break in the day for an hour uninterrupted. So what do we do for those people? And again, this is how research goes. These are people that are interested in health that are opting into my study, right? So what do we do for those people that are inactive, don't know about this research, don't know about that awareness piece? And how do we help them? How do we reach them? That was a big piece of feedback that I got, from defending my studies over the years. It's like, okay, well, these are people that like healthy things. That's why they're playing. How do you help the people that have no clue? I'm like, great point. We need to figure out how to work. That's study number 10. All right, here we go.
Is a very fair question, and sort of in the grand scheme of social well-being, an important one. But at the same time, when you're talking about a technology that is, even with people who want to reach the goal, can only go so far as currently exists, there's still got to be more pieces to add. I mean, have you thought about sort of what other pieces, might you add if you tried another replication to try to improve the overall number? Is it one of those things of, there's going to be a ceiling effect. So if we get 50% of people reaching the goal who enroll in the study, we might have to accept that is how overall workplace society or the workplace social rules, that's all that's going to allow it, because not everyone has that freedom. Not everyone has that lunch break. Not everyone has that area they could go walk around in. What do you think about kind of next steps and where the ceiling might be? Or is there a ceiling?
The more I've thought about it over the years, I think it's really, I think there's an applied piece here, which I think kind of affects my answer. So at the end of the day, talking about why we changing this behavior is to provide people with kind of healthy, outcomes that they like and value and, see purpose in, right? So maybe we do a better job assessing what individuals' physical activity is in general. So there's like one participant that I had that made me think of this, where he was already like an uber amateur athlete. He was like riding to work every day. He was running. I think he was doing triathlons. It's like, is the ceiling really, is he going to benefit, as much as somebody who doesn't do anything, right? Because there's kind of two pieces here. It's like, you can, if you're listening right now and you're not doing anything for your health and wellness, there's 2 ways to improve your health that I'm offering. Is you exercise more, or you can move throughout the day. Moving throughout the day during your workday may be easier than exercising, or vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Depending on what the variables are. So next steps would be, how do we better assess those folks that, okay, maybe everybody who is meeting exercise recommendations, okay, here's how you improve your health in this respect. And maybe if you don't meet those recommendations, this is what you need to do. Maybe it's less about sitting in the workplace. Maybe it's more about meeting people where they currently are in their baseline as it relates to those kind of just general health outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
I like that. And I like that it's not a, you have to do this, right? Because I don't love that. The choice, I think, that's there is helpful. Like if someone doesn't exercise at all, maybe just moving around during the workday is going to be less response effort, and then contact reinforcing contingencies more than if you're forcing them to exercise for 30 minutes every day.
I mean, I think the low hanging fruit would be like working with people that have certain I'd say maybe knee, back, joint pain, in which there's a script that says, hey, you need to move more. I have my brother-in-law, he had low back pain. He used to be a catcher in college. I think that attributed to his back pain, and his doctor recommended a standing desk. Eased the pain, improved his activity and all that, and his back pain's better. So I just think about what's the ceiling for those people. So I didn't do any type of assessment like that, right? So I could have had half my participants could have mild to severe back pain, and I never accounted for that. So there's a lot more opportunities, I think, on the front end of really understanding what each, again, at the individual level, which each person's baseline was. And even when I'm referring to those other public health and ergonomic studies, they're looking at oftentimes very specific groups, like a group of office workers with very severe back pain were a part of a standing desk study and told to do this, and like this is the outcome. So they're very specific on their group selection, and I wasn't as much on mine. Whereas it was more or less university workers, had a desk job, and that's pretty much it.
I'd love to see a similar study or almost the same study in a business that had decided that like fitness of our employees or activity of our employees or health of our employees is actually going to be an important component of what we're offering. It's almost like a good insurance package. Like we care about this so much that we want to talk to the researcher about barriers, and then that gets to be a condition. What if we took away this, or what if we, the bosses were involved in the program as well, so they're sending out the signal to the employees, like, hey, it's okay to get up and move around. Like I'm going to get up and move around, so that it was signaled like there isn't a time that it's not like it's always okay to care about moving around.
Yeah. No, definitely. Buy-in from the top, setting that precedence, building that wellness culture, if you will, of saying like, okay, we're going to have this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z for employee wellness. Next research study is part of that. And by all means, you're licensed to do whatever he recommends. That could be an interesting, study. Let's say you had Clinic A. The director says you can do whatever you want as it relates to health and wellness. Client B, you can't do it, whatever. So you could, or Clinic B, you could kind of compare those two. But yeah, there's many opportunities. I didn't talk about that initially, but yeah, buy-in, organizational support. You could look at walking peers. I mean, equipment. You could look at, there's so much variation. I just took, the basic walking steps. How do we measure it? And just kind of started there. So again, anybody looking for a research topic, the possibilities are endless.
In our library, there's 3 cycling bikes, like reading cycling bikes in the library at our university. And I always wanted to use it. I never did, but I always wanted to.
I can't do physical activity and read at all. Like my head moves too much, and it drives me nuts.
Sick.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Dan. It sounds great in theory, and then the few times I've tried it, it's like, nope, no, dude, I don't like this. Like this is awful.
Well, yeah. Well, now I think here we're talking about preference assessments. We could combine preference assessments with any type of physical activity workplace intervention, right?
Mm-hmm. I like that.
What kind of activity would you like to do? Nick's telling you to do walking. Maybe walking isn't great. I don't know for you, even though we all should, right? But if I gave you a choice, can you rotate those choices? Let's say every hour, every half an hour, you walked and then you did a bike. Okay, then the next one you're going to do a walk. Then the next one you're going to do, I don't know, yoga for 2 minutes. So you could do all kinds of variations there.
I want to rollerblade around the office in a Dayglow t-shirt. That's the only one for me, I think.
Hey, see, that's an open-ended preference assessment like that. I would have never guessed that you would have selected that. That's the value of the assessment.
I think I have one of those headbands for you to wear.
That's right.
Yep.
Because
Complete the look.
if I just rollerbladed around in like a shirt and tie, people would be like, what's going on? But if you put the whole outfit on, it's like they just assume something's happening. They may not want to be a part of it. That's just the way it's going to be from now on.
And we're being silly, and we're we're asking semi-serious research questions. But I mean, you can have a lot of fun with any of these extensions. It's it's maybe because I've been in this workplace wellness space for some time, but sometimes it just seems all very boring and repetitive. Like, okay, we're doing a walking challenge. Okay, great. Now we're doing a food truck. Okay, great. Now we're getting vegetables delivered. Okay, great. Now, like, there's no sauce of behavioral science in here, so it's all very just prescriptive and mundane to me.
That all sounded very exciting. I love food.
Okay.
Delivery.
Sorry if I offended any food truck drivers right now. If you're a food truck driver, pull over, do some jumping jacks, keep driving.
Come to my house.
So, Nick, I think this is a good time. We've sort of talked about your work in the office. We talked about some extensions there. I think it's time to move into dissemination station and sort of talk about what this means to the average individual who may or may not fall into that category, but who's interested in improving their physical activity. So what principles have you learned? Have you shared with us? Do you know about that we should be bringing to the masses, I guess?
Principles,
So,
all of them.
Wait,
Right?
Nick.
The principles, yes.
Nick, we have to actually go into dissemination station.
we're not there yet. We're on the train. We got to walk off. We got to walk off. Oh, good. We was a standing train, so we were all moving the whole
We
time.
were
I
actually
was in the
pushing
dining
the train.
car.
There you go. Pushing the train. I like that.
Pushing the train.
Oh no.
All right. So, Nick, let's talk some principles. So,
Wait.
I want to improve healthy behaviors. You want to improve healthy behaviors. You've made a career out of it. So, I mean, you're probably way ahead of, I think, where we are. What are the principles that we should be bringing to our own kind of fitness goals or our improvement of healthy behavior?
All of the principles is the answer. The bad answer. Now, when it comes down to it, I think I kind of preface this by saying, okay, there's kind of two angles to look at improving your general health and wellness, right? General activity, maybe you just got a sedentary job, sedentary lifestyle. You can start moving the needle that way, carving out time throughout your day. Then you can maybe work on that exercise time throughout the day. So look at one of those two options. Now, the hardest part, which I coach with some of my clients through BehaviorFit, is that now the challenge is to think about what you're going to do over the long term and start measuring and self-monitoring those behaviors. That's step 2. Now, step 3, if you're going to analyze things that are happening, you need to chart those data and then looking at what interventions may be affecting or what environmental pieces, what environmental variables may be affecting those target behaviors. So very, very simple. So measurement, monitoring, picking something, of course, attainable for you. Mm-hmm. Now, a big thing is that I think selection by consequences is a big important part of this. You may, let's say you were a previous, collegiate athlete, you did X, Y, and Z. You used to do that, but now you don't like, running track, playing softball, playing baseball, whatever it is. But now you're coming from a new baseline, so I think it's important to keep sampling new activities until your behavior becomes trapped, if you will, into those natural contingencies, right? I may never know what those natural contingencies would be for you or somebody else, but once you, I think sign up for the idea that I need to always be doing something for my health and fitness, it doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to be at least 3 to 5 days a week. And, you might say it's all the pray and hope method, but you could write things down, say, okay, I'm going to sample yoga for 2 weeks. Okay, do I like it? No? Okay, move to something else. I want to try rollerblading for 2 weeks. Do I like that? Rob? Yes. Okay, moving on. I think those real basic principles of just sampling, and then with the plan of this being like a long-term effort, and that was a big thing for me personally when I got more involved in fitness, is like, okay, I've gone too long without making a long-term commitment, so to speak, so what do I need to do? And so for me, it was sampling different activities, and I finally landed on something I liked. So preferences, sampling, self-monitoring, and then looking at, then fading out those intervention pieces until you're at a comfortable stage of where your health and fitness is.
I think that I would also add in some accountability and outward enforcement, because I think that sometimes is crucial in the midst of stressful environments.
Yeah, planning for, kind of contriving some reinforcers for you, having accountability partners, very good strategies. That's a big component of a lot of, success I think that some of my clients have had is that, they're looking forward to sharing their successes with somebody else. They look forward to meeting somebody at the gym. Again, we're in pandemic life, so
Right.
Some gyms are open, some gyms are closed. People are comfortable or not being around others while they're exercising. So there's all those variables too. But yeah, I think you said it right with, setting up some type of, you could almost pre-mech something like, okay, I need to do this thing at the beginning of the day before I can have my cup of coffee or do whatever.
Yeah, I know that during the pandemic, my friends and I have been yoga zooming.
Yoga zooming, there you go. Yeah.
Yoga zooming.
I know a big piece for me is that for my gym, I really like their programming and I do more weightlifting, cross training, CrossFit type workouts. So for me, the big reinforcer was having a knowledgeable coach and a clear program to follow every day. And so having that replaced with a Zoom session basically was great. So for me, having that, knowing that's what my reinforcer was, helped me quickly switch back and forth from working out at the gym to working out at home and going back. So,
Right.
Really attending to what are those pieces that are most important to you. Some people, I give this example a lot, is that some people, I love taking performance data on my lifts and everything, but some people could care less. All they worry about is I show up to the gym, do my 60 minutes, and I'm good to go. And that's fine. So just really, I think, just being honest with yourself as far as what are your reinforcers that keep your fitness behaviors going. For somebody, that's a social butterfly. Having somebody else, very important. For me, maybe not so much. For somebody else, it could be something different. For Rob, it's new wheels on his rollerblades.
That's right.
Totally.
That's all I care about. I wish it were that simple, I think, in terms of finding those meaningful reinforcers. I know we talked a little bit of, very briefly about it at the beginning, but I mean, Nick, do you see the increase in sort of the minimal response effort in sort of getting a Fitbit or an Apple Watch that sort of sends your data somewhere and you can Instagram it or throw it up on Twitter or whatever, become part of like a social group online? Like, I mean, does that seem sort of like the contingency management plan of the future, or is it just so much marketing speak that could be used? You could leverage that into behavior change, but it's not as easy as maybe an ad would want you to think.
How do you think about, really, we're all individuals and we all have our individual reinforcers. So whatever that turns into, like the form could be contingency management in the way of betting on yourself through a program called Step Bet, where you bet $50 of your own money that you're going to meet your goal. And if you don't, you lose your money. There's that. If that kind of financial piece is a meaningful contingency for you, by all means. But then there's other folks that, some people have a nice social network of, their friends and family of 200 followers. And they, I had a client that posted herself doing pull-ups and she's like, I got so much, praise and recognition that, I couldn't believe that you did that. And so I'm like, oh, well, for a social person, right, that's going to make sense for them. But for somebody else, I had another client tell me, I was doing this Peloton app on the bike and, I just liked the instructor just doing the program. I didn't like all their cheesy motivational comments at the end of the workout. I was like, yeah, some people like that. Some people don't. So I think, again, attending more to like what are the functional variables at an individual level is probably the most important. Mm-hmm. And of course, reinforcement helps.
Well, yeah, one thing I was going to add, and I think this kind of ties into our topic of false resolutions, fake resolutions, right? So I think this time of year, especially, it can be easy to say, I'm going to set myself this goal, right? And if I do a great job of it, then I get to reward myself with X thing at the end of the week. But as we know, it's hard to set up that contingency with only yourself, because just as humans, we have a tendency to cheat. So what you're saying, Rob, is adding in those types of contingency management that's produced by our technology could be helpful, I think, in that it's easier to create some type of accountability system for yourself outside of just, trust me, I know when I earn my Starbucks or whatever it is, right?
Thanks, Diana.
And I see a lot of friends who like share like Map My Run and things like that. I think it makes it easy. And in that sense, that can then help to function as a reinforcer for and an accountability for the community at large.
Mhm.
It didn't turn out to
Yeah.
be a question either, what I just said. But are there other ways, Nick, that you can think of that you might sort of get around that potential problem of setting up a contingency that you're going to then attempt to reward yourself?
That's the hard part, right? That, you could get into the self-control literature, right? Of smaller, sooner, later, larger reinforcers. Again, I think it's that combination of rule governance and contingency shaped behavior, right? I know the rule here is Nick needs to tell me to move around, get more active. The contingency will be, maybe if I do this, over a period of 6 to 12 months, my back may feel better, if that, situation makes sense there. So how do we get around, doing that? I don't have a clear answer for that.
I think it's really challenging because you can cheat, right? Unless the exercise itself is serving another function, right? Is maybe automatically reinforcing, that may be more likely that you'll do it in the future. I think it's really hard because if it's anything extringent, you can cheat. And but you know as well as I do, Diana, that I've tried almost everything under the bus to reinforce myself, but I
Wait,
always
under the bus?
Is that not a phrase?
I think under the sun. Under the bus, you wouldn't find too many options.
There's a lot of
You throw
options under
someone-
the bus.
You throw someone under the bus.
Okay. Well,
I think what we're talking about here is like, okay, what's the reason we're not meeting a particular goal? Maybe that goal is a little too lofty and it wasn't broken down, and they maybe, again, this is where that goal rating piece kind of comes in. It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to make it a little more specific, so you are contacting the natural contingencies of meeting a goal, sharing it with somebody else. Of like, okay, I can't meet the 10,000 step goal. Okay, well, maybe we probably shouldn't have started there. But that's just like a silly example. So it's like, okay, I would break down, okay, what are the reasons, what are the conditions, what are the barriers under which I could not meet the goal? Was it a skill deficit, motivation issue? And then kind of build from there. That's kind of just been my general approach with working with, people in my applied practice, that there's always something that we can kind of break down further and use shaping and differential reinforcement and, basic teaching principles. So
In your practice, Nick, there is an accountability component there because
Mhm.
you're there
Right.
with the person. So they need to be reporting to you or sharing their data
Correct.
with you. So I think that's a important piece, that there might be someone else, if someone's trying to set these goals up on their own for the
Mhm.
new year, let's say, that maybe they need to establish some type of accountability system with someone.
There's that, and then there's I'm a subject matter expert, so then I will say, okay, these are your ideas. Here's what I think you need to work on, and then of course, I'm given the clear direction, like, okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z, of course, with the client's input and everything. And also, these are paying clients. That's a large contingency too. They pay me money to give them advice and to meet on a regular basis and to help them troubleshoot. So that's always a variable too.
Totally.
I know for me, I think if someone said, here's your list and you have to do this every day, and especially if we're tied into some sort of I don't actually know if this technology exists widespread, but it's like it's tied into your Google Home or something. So your electricity, it's just not going to work until you do your whatever steps. So you want to watch TV or eat microwave? No way. It's not happening. I think put those two together, I'd be in great shape. I'd be posting my pictures on Instagram of how great I was at exercising. But it is very hard because, most of my I own them or I have them, so I don't need to do anything. And when I set up those contingencies, I usually just do it myself because I don't want to embarrass myself by failing. So I set it up myself, which of course is a great way to fail because this first time I get tired, I say, well, I'll just go do that anyway. Who's stopping me?
Okay, I kind of see where the kind of question comment is coming from. Okay, so then Rob, you can set up this fantastic contingency, but you can also turn it off, right? And so that's the struggle that I don't say struggle, but that's just a limitation to the work that I do. It's like, okay, if I'm working with telehealth with somebody, I don't control their paycheck. I don't control if they're what they shop for in their grocery store. Like I could give them a recommended exercise list. It's really up for them to report back to me that they did it. And of course we have different teaching procedures like video modeling where I'm teaching somebody how to do a push-up. We break down the push-up in a task analysis. We go over it together. And really the contingency is if you show up without your homework done, then there's no meeting.
Mhm.
So that sets up a potentially aversive situation, avoidance, those types of things. So there needs to be, of course, some, possible punishing type situations, possible aversive situations for, the appetitive to be appetitive. So I can't control all the contingencies in a typically developing, highly competent verbal adult's life, right? They're two independent people. So, where I bring the value and the recommendations is then giving the guidance to set up just the kind of expectations, if you will, of like, okay, this is what we need to do based on your, assessment. And then we're going to report back to each other, and then we will work towards all of your goals.
I hear what you're saying too, that, every person's going to be different in their approach, and there's going to be additional factors that are going to influence their success here. So if you set the goal too high, or they're worried that they're not going to meet the goal 1 week, right? I think that probably the most important thing is that everyone keeps going and keeps trying. So maybe allowing them to, think about what are all the components in my life that are allowing me to exercise more or exercise less, and how can I not get discouraged regarding that, and also recognizing what those barriers might be and troubleshooting those could be important components for someone just starting on their fitness journey.
Sure. Yeah. And I think just a piece that kind of, separates me as a behavior analyst as opposed to any other or most health professionals out there is I'm taking a lot of objective data on a daily basis in a single case design. And this is what all other behavior analysts do in the field, except you're doing it in a different setting. I do it in the health and fitness space. So if I see that what we're doing is not effective after 2 to 3 weeks, I will have probably 14 to 21 data points that's going to tell me as the behavior change agent, the behavior analyst, that I am not doing something right. I am not providing, the proper analysis or intervention. So that really kind of liberates me to figure out, okay, what is it that we need to teach? What's going on? Like, what's happening in the environment that we're not reaching our goals, right? The same thing happens if you're teaching a kid how to speak for the first time. Okay, you've gone 4 weeks without saying a word or going from a 1-word man to a 2-word man. Okay, we're clearly not teaching something right. What do we need to do? And so I do the same thing, just at a different application. So I just kind of bring that as kind of like a parallel for everybody.
Well, Nick, I know health, fitness, physical activity is a huge topic. There's so many other avenues we could go down. But in terms of the length of the podcast, we're sort of at the part we have to start wrapping up. Since we're talking a little bit about fake resolutions, let's talk about a good resolution. So if you had to, you have magic powers. You don't want to do everyone should stand, every 30 minutes for 2 minutes, or the 100 steps or 200 steps, whatever it might be. That one's already done. We did it. We solved the problem. So that's all set. What would you say is the next sort of low-hanging fruit, but would have sort of huge health implications? Is there one sort of skill or healthy behavior, whether it's physical activity or diet, that you would say this is the next frontier? That if everyone just did this a little more, we'd be a better world, be a healthier world.
Yeah, I think it would have to be, a good way to meet those exercise recommendations. That the 30 minutes a week is, we hear about those minutes, but a big piece that's always missing is that strength and conditioning piece. Mm-hmm. So I think if we all, as a society, lifted more heavier things with really good form, we would have so much tremendous outcomes in, all aspects of our life, because I see just in general, which I've learned from many people in the health and fitness industry, that, kind of the phrase is like, strength is never a weakness. And then, when we go about our days, we go about our lives, whatever we do, being healthy and fit and strong just is going to make the rest of our lives better. And, we never want to be in a situation, whether it's, low risk, high risk situation, where kind of our physical ability, our bodies, is a limitation to how we can kind of get out of a, if there's a car accident or a fire, or, there's an unsafe situation, that was kind of a thing for me that kind of clicked over the years. So like building on strength and conditioning just to prepare you for really kind of any unknown event is, if we could all just be a little bit stronger, I think we'd all be off a little better.
All right. So we should all invest. I don't know if there's any available. I think they all keep selling out. But if we all invest in a couple of weights,
well, we got there's tree trunks and there's water jugs. There's all kinds of things. But I think you guys got my drift, right?
Oh yeah, I think so, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, it was such a pleasure having you back on the show again.
Thanks for having me. 4 years has been so long, but I'm excited that I could come back on again.
Yeah. So would you mind telling everyone out in the audience if they want to find you online? You've got a very easy to remember website, but how can they best contact you?
Yeah. So website is www.behaviorfit.com, all one word. And you can reach me at nick@behaviorfit.com. Send me an email, or you can visit the website and drop me a line, contact form, however you want to. And I'm pretty active on Instagram for the most part, but you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, whatever platform you like to play on. So just check me out there, and I'll be more happy to chat about whatever you'd like.
Big thanks once again to Dr. Nicholas Green for coming on the show, all the way from BehaviorFit. It's been a while, like we said during the episode, since we last talked to Nick, and it was a lot of fun to get to catch up with his research and with discussion of behavior analysis and our place in improving physical activity, including physical activity of your hosts. I think right after we were finished recording, we all said we're going to be emailing him pretty soon with some fun exercise ideas for the cold winter New England months where we are doubly or triply trapped inside. A couple other people we, of course, want to thank. Number one being you, the listener. Thank you very much for listening to ABA Inside Track. If you like the show, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Maybe even leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. There are a lot of other ways you can get in touch with us as well. You can go to our website, abainsidetrack.com. Recently redesigned. We hope you like that new design. A little easier to find our episodes, to find links to all the articles we've discussed, and to purchase CEs, purchase learning credits. You can find us on all the social media pages as ABA Inside Track. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest. You can go to our YouTube page, ABA Inside Track YouTube, to find these episodes with the YouTube subtitling feature. And if you're interested in more ABA Inside contact, why not check us out at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where just $5 a month, you can join in with our bi-monthly social meetups, as well as join in for other things like our 3-time-a-year book club worth 2 learning credits, and even a chance to join the hosts on one of those book club episodes. Again, that's patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. I want to thank my co-hosts, Jackie McDonald and Diana Perry-Cruz, for being here. Also, thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro, Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music, Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his editing, and Hollis Irvin from Sycamore Workshop for his visual design. We'll be back next week with another full-length episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!